All right, so seems like we are live. So let me just wait for a few seconds while the live stream actually begins.
Yeah.
All right. So hello and good evening, everyone. We welcome you back to a fun and exciting session on Spacetopia. And today it's going to be a lot of fun, especially for all of you, because it's a Kahoot quiz. So I welcome all of you to this Quiz It Up, the marvel of space telescopes. So with today's session, we come to the tail end of the Global Astronomy Month. So as you all might be aware that April was being celebrated as the Global Astronomy Month. And having said that, we actually conducted several different types of events that included, DIY activities, masterclass. Then we also had, Kahoot sessions, and of course the ongoing competitions, that is the astro painting and poster making competitions, which also I'm going to show you up in a bit. So all these things have been going on. So it has been quite a long and exhaustive month, despite being April. So now, today, with this session, we come to the conclusion of the Global Astronomy Month. Although the month concludes, however, the fun continues. And that is why the competitions that we had announced are already going on. As we had announced in the previous session, that the last date for submission in the competitions has been increased. So let me just share my screen. Just give me a second. I know many of you are very anxious about, the how to join the quiz and all these things. So that also will be showing you. Please do not worry about that. Okay, so let me just share my screen over here. Okay, so when you go to our Spacetopia page, and you scroll down, you will find the Global Astronomy Month banners. And in the Global Astronomy Month, you will find various different kind of sessions that we have conducted. So just before this, we had the Ask an Astronomer. After that, we had a nice DIY session on, the paper helicopter. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Now coming to the competitions, we have a couple of them, the astro painting and the poster making ones. So when you click on each of these competitions and you go to the description, you will find the link of the Padlet page where you can actually submit your artwork. So in the astro painting competition, the link is present. And even in the poster making competition, the link is present in the description. So when you click on these links, you come to these Padlet pages where already you can see that the competition is going on. Several submissions have already come in. And as you can see, the last date of submission has been increased to 20th of May 2026, and the result will be declared on 25th of May. That is towards the last week of May. Okay. But the last date of submission is 20th of May. So please make sure that you are actually submitting your artwork. The details of the guidelines, the evaluation criteria, and everything has been provided on this Padlet page itself. So please do not get confused as to what to submit, how to submit, what are the guidelines, everything. That has been actually provided to you in the Padlet page. So do click on the link in the Spacetopia page, come to the Padlet page. Please go through all these guidelines and evaluation criteria for both the astro painting and the poster making competition. Okay, and then submit accordingly. So as we have already announced earlier, and you can also see clearly written in the brackets that the astro painting competition is for grades 2 to 5, while the poster making competition is for grades 6 to 9. So in whichever grade you are, according to that, you need to submit your artwork. Okay, and according to that also, you have to prepare your artwork. So the evaluation criteria and guidelines are slightly different for the two competitions. So please make sure that you are submitting under your own grade itself. Okay. And of course, while you submit, all the details will be shown. Some of you were facing problems while submitting as well. When you go to this page, you have a post option at the corner. If you see, when you click on post, you will be able to upload the artwork, enter your details, and submit it. And similar, same goes for the poster making as well. Please do not post it in the form of comments, as one of the students has actually posted over here, as you can see, because if you upload it as a comment, then it will not be considered for evaluation. So please make sure you're uploading this as a separate post, as you can see for the other students over here. You can click on the post button and you can upload it. So that's about the competitions that are going on. Now, I'm very sure that all of you are very excited for the quiz. So what I'm going to do is that you can see even the link for these Padlet pages has also been shared with you in the live chat right now in Spacetopia. If anybody is joining us through YouTube, please make sure that you are going to the Spacetopia live chat in order to see the links if you want to, because the live chat of Spacetopia is the one which we monitor, although it is live on both YouTube and Spacetopia. Now coming back to our today's session, let me just share back today's presentation. Just give me a second. So coming to today's presentation, today's session is Quiz It Up, the marvel of space telescopes. So all of you must be aware that what is the way in which we conduct this Kahoot. But if by chance you are joining us for the first time, so let me just clear up the ground rules real quickly. So what you need to do is that when you go to your Spacetopia page and you click on your profile at the top right corner, then you will be able to see your name. Okay, that means you will be able to see your profile button over there. So when you click on the profile button, so what happens is that it takes you to your profile page where you can see your full name. You need to enter the same full name when you enter in the Kahoot quiz. So when you enter in the Kahoot quiz, so this is how your page will look like. We'll be sharing the QR code and the link with you just in a minute. But when you scan that QR code, or when you go to that link, this page will open up. This is how it will look like on the laptop, and this is how it will look like on a mobile phone. So we have attached both the screenshots over here. So in the nickname, you need to enter the same name which you have on your Spacetopia profile. The same, for example, I have the name Carl Sagan, of course, respect to him. So you can enter the entire name as it is, that is Carl Sagan over here. Okay, so although it says do not use your real name, you actually need to use your real name, at least the one which you have on Spacetopia. Now, once you enter your nickname and click on OK Go, it will show you this page you are in. That means you are logged into the quiz and the questions will be visible to you. That means the options will be visible to you once I start the quiz from my end. Now comes the point why we were asking you to join through two devices or two different tabs on a same device. That's because this is how my screen will look like when I show you the questions. The question will be visible and the four options will be visible, or two options, or whatever the options are. However, on your screen, this is how your screen will look like on a laptop or on a mobile. You will be only able to see the colored options on your screen. The question or the option text will not be visible. Okay, so you have to see the question and the options from my screen, and on the other screen or on the other tab that you have opened, you need to answer it accordingly. Okay, so this is the reason why we ask you to join through two devices. Okay, so the most convenient setup is to have this online session running up on a laptop while you can scan the QR code and join the Kahoot quiz through a mobile phone. That is the best setup which we usually suggest. But even if you have two mobile phones, you can do the same thing. But if you do not have two mobile phones, or if you do not have two devices, if you have only one computer or laptop, in that case, you can open up this session on one tab, as you are seeing right now probably. But you can open up the Kahoot quiz in the other tab. But then you'll have to constantly keep switching between the two tabs. So that is something that you need to take care of. So these are the main instructions that are actually very important and that you need to take care of when you are joining the Kahoot quiz. So now that I'm clear with the instructions, so let me just stop sharing and let me just generate the QR code and the link to join the quiz, because I'm sure that, as I can see even in the chat, many of you are very anxious to join this quiz. So let me just give me a minute while I'm generating the QR code for joining this quiz. So meanwhile, if you have any questions or any kind of queries, you can of course put up in the Spacetopia live chat. And regarding the competitions, you can visit the links that have been shared in the chat itself. Let me just start the game. So yeah, so let me just share the link with all of you in the chat itself. So let me just now share my screen. Hold on for a second. So let me just enlarge this QR code. So here is the QR code for joining today's quiz, that is on the marvel of space telescopes. The link to join the quiz has also been shared with you on the Spacetopia live chat. Okay, so if you do not have a mobile phone to scan this QR code, then you can click on that link to join this quiz. So as I had shown you all earlier, when you join this quiz, it will show you you are in. So please do not tap or click on anything. when it says you are in. Please do not click on achievements or anything. Otherwise, you will get logged out. If you have, signed in properly, then your name will be actually visible on my screen over here. Okay, so I'm just enlarging the QR code for some time so that you all can join. So, okay, Matwania is saying wait for 2 minutes, please. Yes, I'm waiting for a minute. Don't worry, but please join quickly so that we can start off with the quiz. I'll wait for a couple of minutes while you all are joining. So please make sure that you are using your proper names while joining. Okay, even if you use just your first name, it is completely fine. At least I should be able to recognize you. By chance, if you are coming upon the leaderboards and if you do not have a proper name, nobody will be knowing that you actually won the quiz. So please make sure that you are using proper names. So meanwhile, I'm sure that most of you might be aware with the general rules and guidelines for our Kahoot quizzes. But if by chance you are joining us for the first time, let me just clarify that as well. Once I start the quiz from my end, as you can see, there's a start button over here. So when I click on the start button, the quiz will start and the questions and options will be visible on my screen. And on your screen, only the colored options will be visible. Okay, so when the colored options are visible, at that time, you can, of course, answer. There is a time limit for every question. The time limit is 40 to 45 seconds. Even if there is a time difference between the live stream and the Kahoot quiz, that is the time when the options arrive on your displays, it is completely fine because the time difference has been accounted for and extra time has been provided for each question of the quiz. So please do not worry. Okay, according to the question, ample time has been provided to you to answer that question, be it what. Now, different types of questions are actually there in the Kahoot quiz, not only multiple choice questions, but also multi-select question, some typing question where you might need to type one word or two. Okay, then there might be, sliders, there might be true, false, and stuff like that. Okay, so whichever question comes in, I will of course announce that, and Kahoot will also show you which type of question that is, whether it is a multiple select, whether it's a true or false, whether it's a slider, whatever it is. Okay, and of course, the most important thing, the points. So once I start the quiz, the points will be calculated based on, of course, first of all, if you are answering the questions correctly. Secondly, the points will also depend upon how quickly you are answering the questions. Okay, so the faster you answer, the more points you get. Okay, but please do not hurry while answering. Otherwise, in answering faster, you might make a mistake. So do take an extra second to just note what is the question, what are the options. A few of them might be slightly tricky, who knows? Okay, so please make sure that you are observing the question properly and answering accordingly. So I can see 15 people have already joined. So Sidhu is asking that my last name is too long, so I put my initial. So it's completely fine, Sindhu. As I said, that you can use your first name itself also. That is also completely fine, but use a proper name. That's all we are asking, so that you can be easily recognized if you are on the leaderboard. Okay. So as I was speaking about the points, so please do not get discouraged if your points are slightly less at the end, because difference in points might be due to the difference in internet connectivity and other factors as well. Okay, just try to answer the questions correctly. What's important is that you get the concepts properly, you get to, answer the questions properly. That is what is more important, right? So I can see 18 of you have already joined. So since it's 6:44 kids, I'll just wait for one more minute while you all are joining. By 6:45 sharp, we'll be starting the quiz. So meanwhile, let me just turn up the volume so that you all have a nice quiz vibe. So yes, I've shared the sound. Okay. Right, so as I can see that 17 of you have actually joined, and since it's already 6:45, let's just start with the quiz. If by chance you are, joining just in between, then probably you'll be able to attend from the question in which you are joining. And if due to any reason you are not able to attend the quiz or you are not able to join the quiz due to some reason that you are busy or stuff, we'll be showing you the QR code to play the self-paced version of the same quiz. Of course, you won't have that fun of competing live with your peers, but yeah, just for knowledge and for your practice, you can still play the self-paced version of this quiz. The QR code and the link to that will be shared with you after we are done with this live quiz. So with that, let me just start the quiz for today. So, all right. So here you go, the quiz it up, the marvel of space telescopes. And here's your first question. Who was the first person to point a telescope towards the sky? All right. So, just a second. So there must have been some error in sharing my screen. Hold on. Just give me a second. I will share back my screen once again. Just give me a second. Yes. All right. So as I can see, majority of you have correctly answered this question. That is Galileo Galilei, and that is absolutely correct. So he was the person, as you can see in the background picture as well. So he was the person who actually, who was the first person to point a telescope towards the sky. Okay. So other people, they were not involved with the telescope. So good to see majority of you answering that correctly. Okay. So let me just give me a second. All right. So with this, let's move on to the next question. So here you can see that this is how the scoreboard looks like. Paridhi is leading, followed by Mansi, Prithvi, Shrithar, and Yuvraj. But we have several more questions to go. So let's see who is able to retain their spot till the end. So here's your next question. So let me just see the settings. Yeah. Here's the next question. Why do scientists send telescopes into space? And the correct answer is to avoid atmospheric distortion. Because of the atmosphere, all the light that comes from different objects in space, it gets distorted. That means it actually gets refracted. Much of the light gets reflected, and some of the light gets absorbed by the atmosphere as well. And there is why, and whatever remaining light actually gets transmitted, that also gets distorted to some extent. And that is why we actually spend billions of dollars to send telescopes to space to avoid that atmospheric distortion and get that nice HD, beautiful quality pictures of the various objects in space. So still good to see that many of you have answered that correctly. So let's see how the scoreboard looks like. This is how the scoreboard looks like. It has changed quite a bit. But now, next question onwards, we'll be quickly rushing forward through the scoreboard and we'll see the scoreboard in some later part of the questions. Let's move to the third one. This is a true or false. Space Shuttle Columbia lifted off with the Hubble Space Telescope on April 24, 1990. And well, the correct answer is actually false. I'm sure that most of you might have answered it true just seeing the date, that is April 24, 1990. However, The correct answer is actually Space Shuttle Endeavour. Space Shuttle Endeavour was the name of the space shuttle in which the Hubble Space Telescope was actually lifted off. So, well, it was kind of a tricky one, I believe, based on the kind of responses that we have got. So, 5 of you have been able to correctly answer that. No worries, let's move to the next one. So, this is a multi-select question now. So, which of the following factors decide how clearly a telescope can see? And well, the correct answers are size of the mirror and instruments on board. Since it was a multi-select question, more than one options were correct. And these two are the options which are actually correct. Distance from Earth and number of solar panels do not decide how clearly a telescope will actually see. Distance from Earth will definitely not decide because Earth is not the planet which we are trying to see with that telescope, right? It's the other objects that we are actually trying to see. And even if you increase a few thousand kilometers from Earth, it doesn't matter at all because most of the objects are actually millions or probably billions of light years away. Okay. And for the previous question, I really apologize. The correct answer is actually Space Shuttle Discovery. In the flow I said Space Shuttle Endeavour, but it's actually Space Shuttle Discovery, on which the Hubble Space Telescope was actually lifted off. So this is how the questions appear. This is how the responses appear for this question. Let's move to the next one now. When was the Hubble Space Telescope successfully launched to be placed in its orbit? And well, the correct answer, which many of you must have also got a hint from the last, couple of questions, it was actually April 24, 1990. That was the date when the Hubble Space Telescope was successfully launched to be placed in its orbit. So it was already there in the true-false question. Despite that, I can see only some of you have been able to actually correctly answer it. No worries. Let's move to the next one. So here's the next one, a true or false. The Hubble Space Telescope sends signals directly to the ground station. And well, the correct answer, it's kind of a 50-50 thing. The correct answer is actually false because the Hubble Space Telescope actually sends the signals through a relay of satellites. Then it reaches the ground station. It doesn't send the signals directly to the ground station. So do remember that. Okay. And that is true for most of the telescopes. They do not directly send the signals to the ground station. Instead, there's a relay of satellites and there are certain communication networks through which all the data goes through and then reaches the ground station, which is located in New Mexico. All right, so with that, let's move to the next one. What was the problem detected in Hubble Space Telescope after it started sending the images of the sky? Well, the correct answer is that the primary mirror had a flaw. And that is why, it actually started sending, very poor quality images of the sky. So we had discussed about this in detail during our Ask an Astronomer session, which we had conducted just a few days ago. So do make sure you watch that session if you haven't yet to get more idea about this flaw, what this flaw was. And it was actually very exciting how much the flaw actually was and how the flaw was actually rectified. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Space telescopes can be referred to as time machines because. Correct answer is that they look into the past, and that is absolutely correct. They are kind of able to look into the past. Once again, we had discussed about this in a bit detail during our Ask an Astronomer session. So do make sure that you watch that, in which we have talked about in detail how these space telescopes are able to look into the past. So, well, with that, let's move on to the ninth one. What is the main function of a telescope's primary mirror? And the correct answer is to collect and focus all the light, because all the light is actually collected and focused by the primary mirror itself. That is also the reason why a telescope's primary mirror is the major factor which decides the quality of data that that telescope is able to provide us. So, well, and often it is also the most expensive part of a space telescope. So with that, let's move on to the next one. This is for double point skits. And a true or false, different space telescopes are needed to observe different features of the objects of our universe. So, well, as I can see that many of you have answered true, and that is absolutely correct. Different types of space telescopes are actually built to observe in different wavelengths. Okay, that is to look at the objects in visible light, in UV light, in infrared, and so on. And that is why to observe the different features, because in each kind of wavelength or in each kind of spectrum, we are able to see the different types of features that the same object has. We have discussed about this also in quite detail during the Ask an Astronomer session. I know that I am continuously referring to that session, but many of these things have actually been discussed during that session. So please make sure that you attend that session to know more about it. And we also covered up certain very interesting and exciting facts about these telescopes. So do make sure you attend that if you haven't yet. Well, let's move on to the next one. This is a typing one. So you need to type in your answer. Hubble Space Telescope primarily observes in dash light. And kids, do make sure that you are typing in only the answer, whether in capitals or small letters, whatever you want. Do not put any comma, full stop, or anything. Just type in your answer and click on submit. That's it. Well, the correct answers are, of course, visible light. If you have written completely visible light, that's also fine. If you have written visible, that's also fine. The Hubble Space Telescope primarily observes in visible light because visible part of the spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum is the one in which the Hubble Space Telescope primarily observes. There's also a small portion of the UV in which it observes and a small portion of the near infrared as well in which it observes. But primary is the visible, and that is why the answer is visible, which few of you have only been able to give. But no worries, we have many more questions to go. So let's move to the next one. What kind of light does the James Webb Space Telescope mainly observe? And the correct answer is infrared radiation. So infrared is the part of the spectrum in which JWST mainly focuses on. So you can see the difference. HST focuses mostly on the visible spectrum, while JWST mainly observes the infrared. And that is why both of these telescopes often complement each other. The same object is observed in both wavelengths, and we get different kind of information from both the telescopes, So that is why it is more of a complement than a competition between these two telescopes. Again, we have discussed about it in quite detail during the Ask an Astronomer, so do make sure you watch that. Let's move to the next one now. This is a slider question, and for double points once again, how many years has it been now since Hubble's launch? So, well, what is the correct answer? Let's find out. The correct answer is 46, which again, many of you have correctly answered. So 14 of you have correctly answered. So good to see that. So 36 years it has been since Hubble's launch. If you back calculate it from 1990, that's what you will get. And it was April 24th. So that is why on April 24th, we had the Ask an Astronomer when we celebrated the 36th anniversary of the Hubble Space Telescope's launch. So well, with that, let's move to the next one. Which telescope studies X-rays from space? And the correct answer is actually Chandra Observatory. In fact, the full name is also the Chandra X-ray Observatory. Okay, we remove the X-ray so that we can trick you up a bit. Okay, so Chandra Observatory is the one which actually studies various objects in space in the X-rays, because X-ray is also a very important component of that electromagnetic spectrum. And there are many objects which we need to study in X-ray to get some detailed information about it. So Chandra Observatory is the correct answer, which again, many of you have answered correctly. So good to see that. Let's move to the next one. To correct the Hubble's mirror flaw, the primary mirror was changed. Well, the correct answer is actually false. Because to solve this problem, that's what we had discussed also during the Ask an Astronomer. People who had attended and people who had asked their question must have answered it correctly, that the primary mirror was actually repaired. So there was an entire separate device that was attached to the Hubble Space Telescope in space. So it was one of a kind mission where astronauts repaired this telescope in space itself. And after that, it started sending us the excellent quality pictures that Hubble is actually known for. So good to see some of you have answered it correctly. Let's move to the next one. Which telescope was planned to be the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope? Well, the correct answer is actually James Webb Space Telescope. So if you can clearly notice that it has been asked which telescope was planned to be the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. So it is actually the James Webb Space Telescope itself, which again, many of you have answered correctly. So after the JWST, now the next telescope that is going to come up, which can be kind of called as the scientific successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, that is the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, because that will also be working mostly in that wavelength, that is the UV to visible wavelength, in which Hubble Space Telescope actually works. But immediately after Hubble, the next successor, which was quite long after Hubble, of course, and that was almost 30 years after Hubble was launched, and that was the James Webb Space Telescope, that is currently, there in the space and sending us immense and amazing data. So with this, we come to almost the tail end of our quiz. I can see Paridhi is leading, followed by Dev, Sridhan, Mansi, and Jaivik. So we have one more question to go, and that is for double points. So let's see if that final question can change these positions. So here's the final question for double points. Why was the James Webb Space Telescope built to observe in infrared? Well, the correct answer is actually the fact that infrared is able to pass through the dust. That's because infrared, with the help of infrared radiation, JWST is able to pierce through the dust, pierce through many of the gases, and look even into the objects, even into the features of the objects which are hidden behind these dust and gases, which in many cases the Hubble and other space telescopes were not able to see. Okay, and that is why the James Webb Telescope was built specifically to focus on the infrared region. In fact, it works in majority in the infrared, in the near infrared and the mid infrared region. Okay, and that is why it is able to give us pictures and data which are billions of light years old. Okay, so with this, we come to the conclusion of today's quiz. That is the quiz it up marvel of space telescopes. I know that many of you might be already aware about what your standings and everything are. And as I had said earlier, that points also depend upon the internet connection and few other factors. What was important is that you answer the questions correctly. But still, let's look at the leaderboard now. So in third position, we have got Srithan. In second position, we got Dev. And in first position with over 16,000 points, we have Paridhi. And along with that, we have Nancy and Prithvi as the runners up in fourth and fifth position. So congratulations to all the winners. Let me just turn down the volume, otherwise I don't think I will be able to you will be able to actually hear me. So thank you all for joining in today's quiz. Congratulations to all the winners. I hope that you all actually enjoyed this Kahoot quiz. You all got some good amount of information and knowledge which you might not have known. And as I told earlier, that many of the questions that we actually asked was discussed in detail in the Ask an Astronomer session. So do make sure that you watch that if you haven't yet. You'll get to learn a lot about these space telescopes, specifically the Hubble and the JWST, and what are some exciting things behind their story. So let me just stop sharing my screen. Hold on for a second. Okay. So once again, I thank you all so much for joining. I'll be sharing back my screen. Just give me a second so that I can show you all the QR code as well as the uh, link to actually join. Let me just share back my screen. Just give me a second. So if by chance you have not been able to, attend today's quiz, or you just want to give it a practice run once again. So in that case, so big round of applause for all the winners. Congratulations to everybody. And thank you all so much for joining. Do make sure you scan this QR code so that you can follow us on all our social media handles for the latest updates in the domain of astronomy and space science. If you have any queries, any doubts, do make sure you contact us on this, on this email ID, that is hello@stemandspace.com. And if you want to play the self-paced version of this quiz, you want to just revise the things again and want to just appear once again for this quiz, then you can scan this QR code to play. The link to the self-paced quiz is also being shared with you in the Spacetopia live chat. So make sure that you either scan this QR code or join the self-paced quiz through the link which is being shared in the Spacetopia live chat. Okay, using that link, and even the link will be also updated in the description of this session. Okay, so after a few minutes you will be able to find the link to the self-paced quiz in the description, both in YouTube and Spacetopia description of this session. So with that, I thank you all so much for joining. With this, we conclude the Global Astronomy Month. Although the competitions are still going on, the link to the competitions are already shared with you in the live chat. You can see once again the astro painting and the poster making competitions. There will be winners. There will be the top 5 winners will be actually rewarded with exciting prizes, winning certificates, and participants will also receive a participation certificate. So do make sure that you, throw in all of your creativity, throw in all of your knowledge and curiosity that you have about astronomy, have about space science, and show us what is the best skill that you have when it comes to art and painting. So with that, thank you all so much for joining. The link to the self-paced quiz will be shared with you in the live chat and also in the descriptions of these sessions. So make sure you play the quiz through that if you haven't been able to play it live. So thank you so much for joining and hope to see you in the next one. Till then, goodbye.